Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm PJ here with Amber, Jill, and our special guest, Sophia. We are here to talk about Shiny Happy People, the Duggar documentary on Prime. In our first episode on the Duggars, we did episodes 1 and 2 in the Prime documentary. And so today we're going to look at their episodes 3 and 4. We're going to look at it as it relates to prey and predator, and as prey and predator relate to emotional abuse, coercive control behaviors, so that you can identify them and so that you can have a language to understand what you're looking at. Trigger warning, there are going to be sensitive issues talked about, sexual abuse and coercive control behaviors. So please take time to take care of yourself within that.
One quick thing before we begin. If you find this content useful, please consider subscribing and leaving a rating and review. This is the best way you can help get this content out there to those who need it. Thanks again. And now to our episode.
Episode 3 of the Duggar doc talked a lot about sexual assault, talked about the Duggar sisters defending their brother, and I guess using their voices to protect their predator. So let's get this party started. Thoughts on, first of all, what happened to the girls? Is it surprising? Thoughts about how Josh was dealt with?
I have a thought about it.
Sure, let's go.
First of all, it's horrifying. But second of all, I just was looking at the timeline. And I know they did documentaries right before they did the TV show. But by the time the TV show was out, I believe he had already done these behaviors.
Yeah.
He had already assaulted his sisters.
Was it just like a once thing, or
no,
was
I think it happened
was ongoing?
I'm not sure of the details, but it from my perspective, it sounded like this was a few things that he did. So somehow there was this belief, there was this horrible thing that was occurring in their household, but they were still going to create a show and glamorize and glorifying how great they are as parents, when they knew that their eldest son had sexually assaulted his sisters. What is that? Like, it's extreme sense of narcissism, or this extreme belief in what they were doing was so beneficial because they didn't deal with their sons.
Okay, so let's talk about what did they do?
Yeah.
What did they do?
I think they sent Josh to work for Bill Gothard for a season, correct?
Well, I think they attempted to send him there.
He was there briefly.
He was there briefly. So
but then it was time to film.
And interestingly, it does not sound like it was any kind of camp or institution for people with sexual abuse issuys.
No, it wasn't. It was
for troubled boys.
That's right.
Yeah.
A work camp, and essentially a labor camp to punish wayward boys, right? Who were sent there by their parents for presumably all kinds of different things, for getting into trouble. So the message to him is, we are going to send you away to hang out with other people and do hard work. And I guess you get to come home at the end of it.
Well, right. I think he was supposed to stay for a while.
Yeah.
But then they needed to film. And so then he was brought back.
Or there was an article or something and they needed him back. But yeah, essentially, from what I wrote down quickly, he did these assaults when he was 12. And then I think it was only brought to the attention of the family friends, the Holts, when he was 15. And that's when he was taken to a police officer that knew Dad and gave him a stern talking to.
Okay, so let's flesh that out a little bit, because I think that in and of itself is a great example of predators protecting predators. You had this oldest boy who was dating a girl, and the oldest boy is Josh. Courting, thank you. Courting. He was courting a young woman, and the young woman was the dad's best friend. So, the dad's best friend's daughter.
Yes.
Thank you. That would be awkward. So when Josh is dating this girl, the parents of the girl are obviously very invested in Josh's personality and character. They get wind of the fact that Josh has sexually abused his sisters. So they confront the parents saying, did you not know that your son has been sexually abusing your daughters? And when were you going to tell us, as the parents of the girl that your son is dating, that your son has this issue? And the answer was, I will tell you, we were going to tell you after
The wedding.
our son got married to your daughter. So let's look at the predatory levels of this for a second. Our son's a predator, and your daughter is innocent prey. And we are going to allow our predatory son to marry your innocent prey. We are not going to protect her. We are not going to protect you as the innocent parents of the prey. We are going to allow our predator to marry your daughter, get her in a covenant relationship, a contractual covenant legal entity. And then we are going to tell you that, by the way, he's a predator. He preys on young girls.
If that's not a bait and switch, I don't know what is.
And then we're going to let you know. So because we have predator protecting a predator, and who's going to pay for it? Because now the prey is going to be taught all the things that they taught the women to do, which is to be loyal and submit and obey and be open to your husband's discipline, and that keep sweet idea, that sort of just be happy. So that, I think, is where we start in this show, is with all of those layers of protection. And then, of course, the parents of the daughter pull out and say, like, this is not acceptable. He needs accountability.
So we're going to go see a police officer because this is an assault that needs to be criminally
and this police officer just happens to be a friend of Jim Bob,
which he doesn't know. They don't know.
But Josh's girlfriend's parents, they want Josh to have some accountability. And so Jim Bob, Josh's dad, says, okay, we're going to get him some accountability. Why don't you come with me to the police station and you will see me confess, and you'll see Josh confess to a police officer. So now they set this father up to look like they're doing the right thing. And the police officer says to Josh, okay, you know what? You've confessed. I see your heart is confessional. I'm going to let you go this time.
Don't do this again.
Yeah.
You'll be in real trouble then.
I'll throw the book at you if I see you again. So now we've appeased the prey's father, who's also prey at this point. And everything looks like it's supposed to look. And only later does he find out that the police officer that he saw them confess to is their friend, a good friend of Jim Bob's.
Which is a big setup, takes so much skill to set up.
Think of that.
This is the preemptive and premeditated journey you have to go on to not want your child, your son, who is abusing and molesting his sisters, the journey you're going so that he does not get any accountability.
In order to protect the predator,
he is protected all the way. And I remember Jim Bob and Michelle are giving a speech, and she says something like, well, why would I talk to my son when I can talk to Father God about Josh's issues? And I'm like, so
absolving herself of responsibility.
Well, I'm going to go to God. He's going to deal with Josh's heart. God's going to deal with. I don't talk to God. I don't talk to Josh and say, "What did you do? You're out of this. You need to get some real help. You need to go see somebody. You need to go to prison. You need to be accountable. You need your sisters to." Whatever. It was just, there was no accountability, and she wasn't even wanting to get into the muck and mire of it. Like, I think at one point,
this is systemic.
At one point, I think she got mad at Jim Bob for calling it molest, I think.
Molestation, yeah.
Molestation. She got mad at him.
Don't use that word.
Don't use that word.
What was it then?
I think touched, or he did something wrong. I don't know. Like,
we're going to minimize it because she's a prey, but she's so caught up in this predatory world that they've got the prey protecting the predator. That's what they do.
Well, it's also embarrassing. You're designing this perfect family that you're presenting to the world that's going to be a infomercial of how your system works. And your firstborn child is a predator.
And your system's not working. And instead of dealing with the complexities of that, we go to the simplicity of it, which is let's just make it look good.
But who would think that wouldn't get out?
Well, of course it's going to get out.
Like, that's the
But
thing.
that's how this whole system has been set up. Think about, like, systemic sexual abuse in the church is not a new topic. We've addressed it before. I don't think any of our listeners would deny that it's deeper than just this family. We know that church as a whole has not held accountability to the system, the legal checks and balances. It's often restorative. Inside the church, keep it quiet, have some counseling, whatever it is, but we're not going to hold people accountable and charge them with sexual assault. That's not
men anyway.
No, absolutely not.
But the arrogance to think, and you're right, this is in government systems, this is in family systems, this is in church systems. It's all like the leader, it can be, not all, but can be guilty of some of these things. And there is an arrogance to think that won't come out.
Well, so then when it does come out, then let's talk a little bit about how the predator uses the prey to do the heavy lifting. So let's talk about what they do with the daughters.
They take them on Megyn Kelly and force them to minimize, first of all, their own experience. Oh, while we were sleeping, he just did this.
I think for me, that was probably my most sick moment of the entire documentary was the twistedness of taking someone who's been a victim of an assault and putting the responsibility on them to minimize that damage, to reframe it, give it different language than what it was, and to publicly absolve their perpetrator on national TV so that we can save the illusion. Imagine the pressure, the behind the scenes conversations. We are here to spread the good news of Jesus. I need you to do this. This is how we're going to protect this teaching. This is how you can do your part. I don't know what coercion they use, but I can only imagine the fear that they would have felt, the pressure they would have felt to keep things going, that you can call something that was so traumatizing, not traumatizing, to save the system.
Well, and also to save the finances of the family. Like, the pressure is, hey, we're going to lose our show.
And how are we going to feed you?
Exactly.
Right? Well, and I don't think there had to be coercion at any level
I think
behind the scenes
because we're happy to do it.
Because the coercion began at birth during
the blanket exercise.
The blanket training.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do sincerely believe that they believed their own words. They weren't doing it out of a way of like, I have to say this, even though this is true for me. They're so disconnected to the reality of what level of abuse they experienced. You're right, since the grooming is so young.
They wouldn't know it's abuse, though. Sorry, but they wouldn't know it's abuse.
I mean, I don't buy, in my mind, I don't buy a lot of what was said in terms of it was so minimized. Oh, we were sleeping.
Yeah.
We were sleeping, so we didn't wait. Like, we never woke up. We were sleeping, so it actually didn't affect us, is what they were essentially saying.
But then how did it come? How did anyone know?
Well, I don't think that's the true story, because the cousin comes out and says, no, there was more to that story.
Well, so they were, I think they were probably very much aware that they were saying things that were not accurate or true. But they would have had no choice in the construct in which they were raised. They did not have a choice to do anything other than cover and protect the predator. That was what they were groomed from birth to do, and they did it. And they did it well, and they did it with a smile on their face, and they did it with grace, and they did it with poise, and they did not want to be there, either of them.
No.
And you can see on the documentary the pain on their face, on Jill's face anyways, just the agony of regretting that moment, because she was betraying herself. She was betraying herself at her deepest value because she had no language for no. Hey everyone, we want to take a quick break to remind you about our Patreon page. 100% of this podcast is self-funded and we can't keep going by ourselves. If you want to help arm the prey of the world, please consider becoming a regular Patreon supporter. You can give as much or as little as you want. Anything and everything helps. So thanks so much. Now back to our episode.
So let's get back to the documentary, and we've got Bill Gothard, the creator of IBLP, and his assault on women and girls still, and how he was found victimizing young women within this program that he has created. And we've also noticed, we were discussing how it's also in his family.
Yeah.
His, PJ, do you want to talk about that? And his brother Steve?
About Bill and Steve.
Bill and Steve.
What a family this is. Bill Gothard, we know we've talked about a little bit, but we haven't talked anything about his brother Steve. His brother Steve was high up in the organization as well. And Steve sexually abused a number of women in the organization. Zero accountability, other than he was moved to a different location after there were enough complaints and people started to begin talking about this. Bill Gothard moved Steve to a different location where presumably he continued his behavior with a new group of prey, though. So once he got moved, Bill also continued sexually harassing young girls.
And it started getting out. There started to be some rumblings about these assaults and this behavior between the two brothers, I'm assuming. And they come up with a new doctrine, which is handy.
Right. And well, before they come up with the doctrine, one thing I thought was really interesting is when Bill got women, these young girls that wouldn't submit to him in the way that he wanted, a part of the punishment, we've talked about punishment being a coercive control technique, was to send them to Steve's encampment, where Steve essentially was more free to sexually abuse them and had more control because he was less of a public figure. So that's interesting. And then when now the rumblings, because, Steve got moved because of rumblings, and now Steve got, now in the new place, there's new rumblings. So how does a predator, here's a riddle, how does a predator deal with accountability? So, these two men are sexually abusing women and the women are starting to speak. The prey are starting to rise up. How do we deal with prey rising up? Suggestions?
I have an idea.
What?
Sophia,
Tell us.
Why don't we create a new doctrine about gossip and make that the new theme of what we're not supposed to do so we can shut down the talking?
Matthew 18 teaching made gossiping impermissible, especially making allegations against the leaders in particular. Makes abuse impossible to report. Essentially, it's Darvo again.
Yeah.
So what's Darvo?
So, yeah, we get deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Right.
So we have this so how does the predator deal with this? The predators are in serious harm's way of becoming accountable. And so instead, right, Sophia, they create this new doctrine, and then this Matthew 18 thing comes up. And so now we shut it down with a new doctrine designed to protect us.
And we make the girls come out and share this new doctrine. That's what I thought was interesting. They were the one who were standing in front of everybody going, it's not right to gossip if these allegations, you need to...
Which girls would do
The girls, the Duggar girls.
That would be the Duggar girls, but also the Gothard girls. Because if you remember part of that series, what he would do was he would interview each girl and decide which ones would actually work closest with him. So he was already vetting victims. That's what I would call it. Seeing who's most vulnerable, who is so compliant, who is already the most submissive, Those girls were chosen to be his girls. Now, every once in a while, he must have made a mistake where someone actually started to have a voice. But the majority of those girls were already chosen because of their submissive nature. So then those were the girls that would be the advocates for the new teaching about gossip. So I'm going to teach all of the other girls, like, what she did is not okay. She's gossiping about our leaders, and this is the proper way to be a godly woman.
But it's also the extra mile in this situation is you go to that person privately. How many people are going to go to Bill Gothard privately and say, do you remember that time that you touched here? That made me feel uncomfortable. They're not going to do that.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have done that.
Even
not
if
safe.
even if they did it.
Even if you weren't groomed in that culture, that's a scary.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, remember when you sexually touched me? No, I don't. I never did that. Why are you an evil harlot? Or, yes, I do, because you're an evil person who seduced me into,
Your mind is twisting my intentions.
yes, you're never going to win.
But this is also seen in other, like I know in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have a doctrine of it has to be 2 witnesses present. So imagine in this situation where one person assaults another, the victim says that person did it to me. The other person says, no, I didn't. It was just 2 people there, but I said no. So there has to be another victim to say, but there's not going to be.
Well, and now we created doctrine that says if you try
Another
to talk
set
to,
of doctrine.
again, so that's we've got this isolation. We've got
Fear.
we've got fear, we've got isolation, we've got punishment. You don't get to speak. And if you do speak, you will be corrected. You will be in violation of something very important.
Well, look at the punishment too. You've made it to be one of the girls and you've been elevated. That's the ultimate arrival, I think one of the girls said.
Yeah.
When you could be one of his helpers.
Headquarters.
Yeah,
At
didn't
the
you say it was like a
headquarters.
rock star and the Pope?
Justin Bieber.
And Justin Bieber all rolled into one.
rolled into one.
Which is kind of hard to believe, to be honest, like when you look at him.
But your punishment is to be removed from that position and sent to the other building, to the other
Steve.
brother, right? Oh, Steve's the stinky prize, second prize, right? So you're demoted for speaking your truth. And the girls who are now teaching the don't gossip are being even further elevated, even more promoted. They're being praised. That's the love piece and how we're praising you for still continuing to perpetuate silence.
Because we're taking the praise worst nightmare is to not belong. That's the Jilly, you were
That's
mentioning
right.
that.
That's right.
And now we're saying you don't get to belong if you speak, if you talk to anybody, because we all know that when you talk to other people, that's why we have this podcast. When we start talking about it, that's when we start making connections. That's when we start getting support. And so this entire doctrine shuts that down completely.
Well, it's even, I was looking at my notes here, defrauding, stirring up sexual desires that cannot be righteously fulfilled. So even in that situation where, a victim might go to Bill Gothard and say, you did this and you violated me, he could even argue, well, you stirred up sexual desires in me. It's your fault.
But that's purity culture. It's always the female's fault.
IBLP also had curriculum which addressed these issues further. They had these little wisdom books, little booklets that talked about characteristics that perhaps godly women and men could embody. And under rape or sexual assault, which they do talk about, they say if a woman does not cry out during rape, she is as guilty as the other.
Cry out to God.
Is it?
Yeah, I have it
out
written
to
out.
God?
Wisdom Book 36. If a woman does not cry out to God while being assaulted, she is equally to blame. So if you cry out, but you don't cry out to God.
Well, I think even just like how I saw that was this intense situation where you've got these girls groomed literally from blanket training birth.
Right. They've already been trained not that they don't have a voice.
No.
So why would I cry out if I don't have a voice? I don't know how to cry out.
Yes. How would you even know? Can
No,
you
you wouldn't.
imagine
I would
it?
just take it.
It's like this leader, this authority, this umbrella person who you are designed to obey, and if you don't, you are outside of a covering destined for I don't know, hell itself. And this person is attacking you sexually, which you have no construct for whatsoever, and you're supposed to scream from the rooftops. And if you don't, well,
You probably enjoyed it.
I guess you liked it. I guess you wanted it. I guess you are equally as culpable as that person. So who are you to say anything?
There's a story in the documentary of the one victim who she went to a website that was for all ex IBLP, and she wrote, "This is my story," or she typed it in and
Anonymously, right?
Anonymously, and Bill Gothard found out. And she talks about how he called her, and she said he was essentially ripping into her, yelling at her or whatever. I don't know, but I wasn't there, but was talking at her adamantly, I guess, for over an hour on the phone.
Giving her words of encouragement.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I remember it crossed my mind, like, why didn't she hang up?
Yeah.
Right?
Why didn't she hang up? But she stayed
had no
on
voice.
that phone. I wrote this down, for an hour, listening to him berate her for making that comment. And it reminded me of like stories that we've heard in the media where these victims like that, all these stories, it was like, why did they go back to him? Or why did they keep dating him? Or why did they call him after being assaulted by... But that's what victims do.
Oh, it reminds me of my own experiences with predators. I mean, they talk at you,
pedal.
and they rip you to shreds. And even without this training, I was sitting, listening, and because I wanted to be a kind, authentic, real person who respected that they were upset. So
Who loved well.
Yeah, I wanted to be loving. So I mean, yet alone being trained from birth to not say no and to submit and
To not have a voice.
I mean, that's this prey are already susceptible to this type of stuff. Yet alone being trained from birth.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a chance.
And when we ask those victims to absolve the perpetrator, to go on a TV show and say, my brother, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that terrible.
I'm fine.
To minimize.
We're fine.
We're
We were
re-traumatizing victims over and over again. And then we're punished. As soon as you do find your voice to create a system of punishment, you finally had the courage to say something that happened to you out loud. And now this stacking, this next layer of abuse with a doctrine, now you're a gossip on top of all the ways that you've lured, caused the man to lust. You've been failing at every level, and all of this is your fault. How twisted a system that predators can stack that many rules so that the prey is always responsible. You're responsible, and it's your fault. And if you complain about it, you're even going into a deeper hole of all the ways that you are failing as a responsible, I hate to use the word Christian, whatever, like woman in this culture.
And I think it also creates women who will track victims will track other victims that they're performing correctly.
Well, not only men, like men are not the only ones who can be predators. I mean,
no, but that's exactly it. Because I was thinking about how in one of the episodes, they had like the booklet, the wisdom booklet, and there was a picture of like, what's wrong with this picture? And you see a female figure with like a lacy top, and you had to circle it. And I had a thought, because I went to a private Christian school, and if I had gotten that, I would have loved that. That's a great little activity.
Yeah.
You get to circle what's wrong. Well, there's a slit. Ooh, the slit. And I remember even going
V-neck.
Slit for a slut.
I sat through chapels that were talking about what a woman can wear, and in hindsight, I think, wow, what was that pastor dealing with? That's what he needed to talk about for an hour and a half, about how women were wearing this type of makeup or their slits were too high. Or
I literally, in our community, I have literally sat in a church and heard the pastor from the pulpit talk about women who dress inappropriately and make it hard for him as a pastor to pay attention. And those women often sit in the front. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, you've got to be kidding. And
sorry, I'm laughing. I just imagine being in the front row of that message. You're like, oh, dang it! What am I wearing?
I mean, and this was in a local congregation, but that congregation is one of the largest congregations of our community, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of people, and this was the women's fault. This absolutely. So this is not dead in the water, and it's not seen as predatory.
And it's our responsibility as women to dress in a certain way so that men will not lust. And if they do, it's because of how you're dressed, not because they're responsible for their own thought life.
Well, and you pair that with this kind of rhetoric of you have opened a door for somebody to hurt you sexually. And therefore it's your fault. And then you can't talk about it. You can't get help for it. You can't have support for it. You just have to hold it. You have to bear it. You are
be thankful to God.
Right.
Really.
And be thankful for it. Right. I mean, this is where every single time we keep bumping up against this prey versus predator.
I was thinking about the fact that Bill Gothard, I was just thinking in the moment right here, how he, after those women they came to the victims, they came together to make these accusations against Bill Gothard and this whole ministry. And they wanted to have a lawsuit, right? And then they said that there's statute of limitations and they couldn't. How he decided to weaponize the legal system against them. Remember, he was going to, he sued them for damages.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So he was re-traumatizing because I was thinking about how much money this whole institute, it's millions. That's why even the Duggars are involved in this, because they were the biggest commercial for how well this works. And they're saying that possibly Jim Bob wants to take it over because it's worth a lot of money. And now it's turned into Bible studies and whatever. But the fact that he was using the legal system to re-traumatize the victims and how often that happens.
That he is the victim.
Predators do that. Like, this is almost, as soon as I heard it, I was like, textbook. The predators re-traumatize the prey.
Well, and if you look at what's happening, when you look at what's happening, like, this is going off on a bit of a tangent here, but bang, that is such a deep point because it's happening right now in family courts. Right now, as we speak, there is a law in the U.S., I think it was called Caden's Law, and there's a law in Canada, Kira's Law, and the UK just passed coercive control as illegal. I think Australia as well, there's a new law. So there's these new laws. What are the laws? The laws are designed to stop what's happening right now. What's happening right now in family courts are the predators who are hurting they've domestic abusers, so they've hurt their spouses, and the women are coming forward saying, this person hurt me and hurts my kids, and the kids don't want to connect with him. And it's not always men who do this, but it's by far the majority. So then the men, in order to hurt the women, just exactly like what you're saying, Amber, in order to hurt the women and maintain this coercive control, even though the women have escaped and gotten out of a relationship with the predator then takes the prey to court and alleges this thing called parental alienation. That's why my kids don't like me, because my ex has turned them against me. That's why they're bad. That's why they don't like me. So the court, of course, is also in many cases prey. They do not see this as it's kind of makes sense. Oh, children like their parents. This makes sense. Whether or not they're abusive, the kids always like their parents. And parents should have a right to see their children. And so they go and say, if children don't like their parent, it must be because
of the other person.
It must be because somebody is telling them not to.
Couldn't possibly be their own personal experience with that parent.
Right.
That was harmful or scary.
It couldn't, right? Because it would that wouldn't make sense. And then a whole host of other people are pulling up around, professionals are pulling up around the abuser saying, oh, you're going to throw money at this. We'll take that money. We'll help you figure out how to get these kids to like you again.
So it's like re-traumatizing through the legal system.
Right. And so
it's exactly the same.
So
it's exactly the same. No gossip.
No. So
we're going to punish the other parent for gossiping. So because we're going to label calling abuse gossip.
Yeah. You should have gone to them directly.
Instead of calling it truth, which was what it was. Yes. Or giving language to true abuse.
Now, in this case, though, it backfires on Gothard.
Yes, because they actually go before the judge. He went, okay, you want to sue them for thousands of dollars, which would have been devastating to, I'm imagining, to these women. It's not like they have the resources like he does. He's the one with the resources. That's the screwed up part. It's sometimes the legal system can, be on the side of the people with the resources because they can hire the lawyers. So he's the one with the resources going to countersue. These women, their charges were dropped because of the statute of limitations. They come and tell their stories before the judge, and he went, well, their stories are credible. You can't do this, which is very validating, in which I'm glad that that's how it turned out for them. But you can imagine the worst. If he's got all these resources, millions upon millions of dollars, time on his hands because he's been kicked out of his ministry.
I mean, these young women, after being sexually abused, could then have been taken to court by Bill Gothard. He might have won, and then they might have faced financial ruin and imprisonment.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they would have been thrown
or some kind of legal punishment, and their name have been sullied for the rest of their lives when the actual predator walks away free. That's what could have happened. Thank goodness, in this case, a judge saw the realities and actually believed the young women.
Whether you're listening to this on a podcast platform or on YouTube, please share it with anyone you think could use it. Emotional abuse is not widely understood, which is also often why predatory behavior can last as long as it does. Help us spread the word to stop predators and protect fellow prey. #PrayPower.
Can we just take a moment to talk about the scene where they were showing after Josh's conviction, seeing and talking about how his wife is still at some level supporting him. Clearly,
loyal?
We don't know, or loyalty is probably the right term. I can't even imagine for her, like just watching myself made me sick to my stomach. I can't even fathom what that is like when you have young children in your home and your larger community is demanding of you to have unconditional support.
I don't know. Maybe it hasn't occurred to her not to have unconditional support. This is how she's been groomed. I don't think she's
I find it so
been
hard
taught
to
to
believe
think
that,
critically.
I find it so hard to believe that at some level you couldn't Sophia, now my children are in danger.
No, but Sophia,
Totally.
I think you're forgetting that loyalty can only be shown in adversity.
Yeah.
And I think that you are forgetting that you need to be willing to love your spouse even when it hurts. And your husband is your leader. And what other values
What
to
other
be
ways
a
can you
good
make me throw up in my mouth? It is so, I agree with you.
But
the
this is the
systemic
training.
Conditioning is the problem.
Yeah.
The manifestation is loyalty in the face of insanity.
In insanity. I agree with you.
Insanity.
You're in a way, I think it's unfathomable to us because there were children in the home. Mm-hmm. Her children are in the home. Her daughter, her son.
Amber, suffering means holiness.
It's not about being happy. It's about being holy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can shut you down in a hot minute. We've got lots of doctrine.
And I guess they are the head. He is the head.
He is still the head.
He is the head of the household. He is the father. Like, I think about the well-being of the children. If you think of their well-being over his well-being, I guess you're having a child-centered home when it should be centered around.
True. You would need to submit to him under any circumstance to keep the umbrella.
In the Old Testament, it says, touch not God's elect. So then Josh would be God's elect. So,
I mean, we could be here all day.
yeah.
I think the prey has no voice.
Right.
And every time the prey tries to use the voice, the doctrine is created to shut it up and shut it down. And so as long as you are interested in loving and belonging, you are hooped.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if we can talk, because part of I know our time is short, but one of the highlights of all the darkness that we saw in these 4 episodes, one of the lights that was so overwhelming for me is there's a moment where Jill Duggar says, you have to go through hell because it's not until then that you're willing to risk everything. And there are all of these people throughout the documentary that you get to meet who have lived lives with the Duggars, alongside them, or sort of parallel experiences.
Or just in the ministry itself and raised in it.
And they have begun this process of deconstructing their faith, and they have been put through hell. So they are at a place where they're able to risk everything. And it looks like most of them had to risk belonging to everybody that they loved. And I would like to park and us to talk a little bit about those people and the light that they shine, because they are prey who have a voice now. They have fought all of this. All of this has been laid on them, and they have fought to be true.
They are the embodiment of hashtag pray power.
Yes.
Like, they are the personification. They, create what it is to be pray power and be powerful in having a voice and using your story. I wrote down one of the quotes. I think it's from The Couple, and it's from, I'm not sure, but you are trustworthy and you can believe in yourself. And I just was like, wow, like, you're growing, or you're in a system that says what you experience, may be right or may be wrong, depending on how you view it. So if it encourages or raises up the predator, then yes, what you feel is correct. Oh, but if it puts the predator in a bad light, oh, you're wrong. So you can never trust, your own experience, because hey, I just saw that person do that and I don't think that's right. Well, you don't question it.
Yeah.
Because what your experience is wrong. It must be wrong because you're thinking it. So it really moved me, because I thought, in my case, I can even relate to that. I can relate to this idea of, like, never really taking in your experience and thinking that that's valid. Like, my experience of that, like, I didn't understand that, and that made no sense to me. And I kind of questioned it, but I put it back. Like, the fact that you are learning, and these people are, that what they are experienced and what they are experiencing now is real. And they have a right to their voice.
I keep thinking about how expensive their truth was and how courageous. And for anyone who's listening, if you are in a situation where you are the prey, the courage that it takes, but when we get the language, it's why we're doing this podcast. When we have the language to say this is abuse, I can remember the moment when I realized what I experienced was abuse. And as hard as that was to reconcile that in my own mind, and how that created, quite honestly, years of unraveling and redefining my experience, the power that comes from sticking to your truth and being bold enough and courageous enough to speak your truth to help unlock that truth for other people takes so much courage. And I just want to celebrate all of those people that took that risk, because I really do believe it will help others who have been in the same system to see and to have language and to truly be set free themselves.
Amen.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's so beautiful, because I notice the thing that hit me hardest was watching as these people throughout the 4 episodes, a lot of them are on all of the episodes or right from the beginning, and they are talking about their sexual abuse. They're talking about their trauma. They're talking about, and they're very stoic and very strong. And it's not until the end where they start talking about using their own voice, trusting their own hearts, understanding that they get to speak their truth. And they get so choked up and so emotional. And I feel almost like choked up talking and thinking about that for them, because there's so much beauty, but such cost. And they did it. They got there. They were robbed of that their entire lives till they got to the point where they went to hell. And it was hell that created this salvation. Ironically, it was hell where they were going to lose everything, and they used their voice.
I often say there's no resurrection without death.
Yeah. Oh, I love, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
using
genius.
a biblical
Yeah.
metaphor.
And they had to. This whole thing, the predator power had to die for the prey to live. And that is what has to happen every single time.
Well, and I think you have to reconnect to the part of yourself that gets it and can trust your own intuition and trust your own prayness, I would say. Because even in my life, and that's why I feel like some, connection to these people, I think the most powerful lesson that I've learned, even in some of my trainings, it's been, how are you experiencing this? What is going through me in order to share with other people? And I think sometimes when we're taught in these systems, it's through the minister, it's through the prophet, it's through the man, or through the powerful woman. It's rarely through the prey. They're experiencing it. And when it can go through their own experience, they have a lot of truth to tell. They have a lot of powerful things to say. And recognizing that is really
because they will
amazing.
Because they will say it with creativity. They will say it with curiosity. They will say it with a level of uncertainty and they will say it without superiority. And therefore it is not as attractive because it is not as certain. It is not as superior.
It might be a bit messy.
It might be, yes, it's not as clean and as simple. It's complex. It's hard. And we don't want that message so often. And so when you find prey that love their voice and are fighting hard to have that, that could be one of the most beautiful things that we can offer people. And for the predators to shut that down on us collectively as prey is one of the greatest evils.
Thanks, guys.
Hashtag pray power.
Hashtag
So
pray
good.
power.